Okay. Okay. The first thing I would like to talk about is a brief history. This is probably hard to see, but I can send this to you. This is on our transportation plan. And I just love this because it shows that we started working on trails in the city of Oxford in 1973. I'm pretty sure that's before Scott and I were both born. And but what they did is the city of Oxford appointed a bicycle coordinating committee, which looked at doing a path out to Houston Woods. And I still think that's a great idea. And then, but things kind of took a nap for a little while, the way they do sometimes. And then in 1989, 88 and 89, the Chamber of Commerce had a 32-member Future of Oxford committee, and they recommended green belts around Oxford, as well as bikeways, walking, and a walking path encircling Oxford. Then another 10 years passed, and in 1999 to 2000, we have a Miami University student report entitled A Multi-Use Perimeter Path. It's a feasibility study. And then around that time, the city of Oxford is constructing the community park, and they have their first sections of a multi-use trail there. Then in 2004 to 2007, the Oxford Area Trails Committee gets really organized. This group of citizens develops a route around the city of Oxford. They raise money. They hire a consultant to develop a feasibility study and cost estimate. And that was actually submitted to City Council in 2007 and made a part of the City Comprehensive Plan in 2008. And that really launched things along. But what happened is the Great Recession also happened at that same time. And so everything was put on hold again, despite tremendous momentum. And then as the recession lifted, and in 2013, I was actually hired at Enjoy Oxford, and I had this great idea to do a bike trail out to Houston Woods. And I actually started working with Sam Perry from our community development department about that. And, we were just kind of starting over. And I'll never forget this day when Marty Creech came in, a part of the original Oxford Area Trails Committee from this 2004 time period. And he brought in this big tub and he put it down and he said, "You want a bike trail? We've got a bike trail." And we had maps and cost estimates, and we were really able to launch into the grant writing much sooner than we thought. And we did. With City Council support, we applied for grants from Clean Ohio. We won, and then we were able to build the first phase in 2017, the Black Bridge Connector. Then we started writing more grants, and I'll tell you, this trail is expensive, and we needed more local match. Every time you write a grant, you need a local match. And so in 2018, we went to the residents of Oxford with a levy, asking for a 10-year levy to help us build this 12-mile loop around Oxford. And the levy passed, which really launched us into where we are today. And so we have some other grants that have been awarded, and we just opened in 2020 our second phase of the Oxford Area Trail, and we have many more to do, but I wanted to give you that brief history. But why trails? Let's just take a moment to reflect on why I get so excited about this. And for me, it's about quality of life and the climate. And, people live where they want to live. And they live where there are amenities. And so when we build these trails, we are building a place that a community that people want to live in. And so we're going to attract residents, we're going to attract visitors, and then residents and visitors support businesses, and then our businesses thrive, and it becomes a revolving cycle of a positive thing for our community. The other reason that I'm really excited about is our climate. So the more we build this infrastructure, the more we're providing a way for people to walk or bike to school or work. Every time, I'll admit, I sit in that carpool line for my middle schooler and my high schooler, and I'm like, if I could just drop them off and they could ride their bike to school, that'd be amazing. And so those are things that we're thinking about in our community as we're looking to the future. So I want to share with you our map. And this is our goal. And our goal is to eventually have it's almost 12 miles. route around the city of Oxford that is 10-foot wide paved path that is ADA compliant. I want it to be safe for 8 and 80-year-olds. I want it off the road so people can fall off their tricycle and not worry about a car passing by, or someone who's in a wheelchair is able to enjoy nature. These are all the goals that we have with this route. And it also connects to very many key community areas. So it connects to parks, it connects to schools, it connects to historical sites. And so that's the reason this route was initially proposed by those citizens all those years ago. Our first thing that we did after the community park, which we talked about was built in the early 2000s, in 2017, we built a trail that goes from Kelly Drive over the covered bridge and then ends at Leonard Howe Park. And that was what we called phase 1. That opened in 2017. It was done by generous donations from the community and a Clean Ohio grant. Then we started to apply for the second phase, which we decided to go ahead and jump over this existing crushed stone. And the reason is, years ago, when we wrote, these grants, when you write them, you wait several years to then do your construction. And so several years ago, when we applied, this coal ash segment was in great condition. And we're like, it's great. It's been great for decades. Let's jump across. And so we applied for phase 2, which goes from State Route 73 over to US 27. And we had a lot of support from Miami University. They helped us do the grant match for this as well. And we know that in the time between getting the grant and building this new segment, that we actually had several 100-year floods over on this coal ash path that has made it pretty hard to ride on. And we know it. We're going to be paving it soon. And Miami's also been a great helper in helping us kind of smooth over, kind of put Band-Aids on it to help us continue to use that segment. But enough about that. Let's continue talking about phase 2, which opened this summer in the middle of a pandemic, and it is beautiful. A special thank you to Scott and his team. It has new bridges, it has winding paths through the woods. When I first rode on this with my son, I think I literally squealed out loud. I was so excited. But looking ahead to the future, phase 3 and 4 are actually in the works right now. So Scott and his team are actively doing the engineering and design. And then we hope to co-build these 2 sections in 2022. We received 2 grants, both grants from OKI, but from different channels, but they're going to allow us to implement the construction of both of them in 2022. First, we'll talk about phase 3. Which it's going to go back and pave that crushed stone. So from Leonard Howe Park over to the DeWitt Log Cabin. And then it's going to jump over to Peffer Park and go up to the Talawanda High School. So if you guys haven't walked on that crushed stone part, it kind of looks like this. It's the old coal ash from the Miami coal-fired plant that they don't do anymore. And then it'll be, you can see here on this little map image from Peffer Park, it'll come up and end at the back of the high school. The cost breakdown is that it will be $1,558,575 to construct it. We received a grant from OKI called CMAQ, which is it's like an air quality grant of $1,168,931, which means between our local engineering and design cost and our construction match, the levy is going to contribute $678,933. And now I'm going to let Scott talk a little bit about, these are the actual design routes that we have.
Thank you, Jessica. We currently have our design consultant working on the phase 3 and phase 4 trail stage 1 plans. This would be the first plans we receive that we review and comment on. These are currently being reviewed by us and ODOT and Miami. So we plan to have comments soon with then followed by final plans and right-of-way negotiations starting later this year. Starting out with the first section of phase 3, which, as Jessica mentioned, follows the existing coal ash trail. This trail is currently signed as a OACH trail alignment. I guess basically the goal is to provide a 10-foot wide asphalt path on the existing coal ash trail. If any of you are familiar with it, there are a few areas that have been damaged by flooding. And so as part of this project, there'll be some subgrade stabilization and added drainage structures to try to prevent that in the future. So the trail, it will follow the existing alignment from Bonham Road and enter into the wooded area, basically following the existing grade. There shouldn't be any significant grade changes through the wooded area, and then it'll go along behind Miami's compost facility, where there'll be some added swales and drainage structures to try to help out with some of the flood damage in that area. From there, it will go around the current curve, and that curve will be softened out some to help with some sight distance and to the design for bicycle traffic. And then it will continue on past the horse pastures and the DeWitt cabin, and across the existing bridge. The existing bridge will be reused with some modifications for safety, and connect to the existing parking lot at Oxford Trenton Road.
Next slide. Are you ready?
Yeah. The other part of phase 3 is the connection between Peffer Park and Talawanda High School. This alignment is currently designed to follow or connect at the existing bridge at the Peffer Park parking lot, and follow the existing nature trail alignment for a short distance. And there's currently an area that you can view the bluffs along the creek. And as part of this design, they plan to construct kind of an overlook area in that location. And then from there, the plan is to kind of create a new alignment for this portion of the trail. There's a lot of existing nature trails throughout this property. Those are all going to stay intact and remain as they are, and they will kind of crisscross and connect to this new alignment throughout the area. So the new alignment will kind of follow the toe of the slope as it enters into the woods, to try to maintain a minimum 5% grade, so that we don't have steep grades for all the users of the trail. There'll be a few culvert structures installed along this area. There's not any bridges that are required in this location like on phase 2. So the trail will continue to follow the toe of the slope, and then enter into the challenge course area of the Miami University Outdoor Pursuit Center. The plan is to have minimal disturbance to the existing facilities in that area. There may be a couple small platforms that would need relocated. That's all being coordinated with Miami University. In this area, there will be required to be some fill sections to maintain the maximum slope areas. And then the trail continues on towards the railroad tracks. And in that area, there'll be some cut sections, again, to make sure that we're maintaining the minimum and the maximum slopes in that area. And from there, the trail kind of veers away from the railroad tracks. And that is in order to leave some room for a future railroad crossing for another phase that Jessica will be discussing here in a minute. But the idea was to keep the trail away from the railroad tracks so that we would not have to reconstruct any of the trail in this area. From there, the trail continues onto private property, and pretty straightforward, flat area. There will be a couple large culvert crossings that will be required before the trail enters onto the Talawanda High School property and connects to the existing sidewalk at the high school.
Thank you, Scott. So this is the area that we were talking about where if you walk up in that area now, you can see the creek, and then they're proposing that we build this really cool lookout. I'm pretty excited about it. So stay tuned for 2022. Then moving on to talk about phase 4, which if you remember will be built at the same time. And that will go from the Talawanda Middle School along Oxford Riley Road, and then end up at the Oxford Community Park, traveling along Brookville Road. And so I'm going to, before I turn it over to Scott again, so you can see at Talawanda Middle School, I'm pretty excited about doing an improved area right here where the kids walk and bike to school. I call it the janky curve over here, where I've seen kids fall off their bikes, and there's kind of a big ditch over here. So I'm excited about that improvement. And then I'm excited about getting the pedestrian connectivity out to our community park and making it more usable and accessible for different modes of transportation. And then with that, I'm getting ahead of myself. The phase 4 cost breakdown is the construction cost are $2,731,539. We have a grant from OKI Transportation Alternatives for $750,000, which means that our levy contribution between both about $400,000 in engineering and close to $2 million in construction is just over $2 million from our levy will be going to phase 4. And now I'll let Scott talk about the actual design route. So go ahead, Scott.
Okay, so the phase 4 route, it begins at the community park entrance along Brookville Road, staying along the north side of Brookville Road, approximately 20 feet off the edge of the roadway. There's a ditch and some vegetation between the roadway and where the proposed trail will be going. So the first 500 feet or so of the trail will be in the township area, and there'll be some easements required to construct the trail through there. There's not a lot of grade changes or anything proposed in this area. It's all pretty flat. And then once you get to Autumn Drive is where you enter the corporation limits. And from that point, the plan is to be within the existing right-of-way of Brookville Road and create some new crosswalks and curb ramps at the 2 Autumn Drive intersections, and then also at the Winding Brook intersection. And continuing along Brookville Road until you get to the corporation limit sign, there's the right-of-way narrows in that location. So the trail will need to be moved a little bit closer to the road through there, and they'll add curb and gutter along that side of the road in order to facilitate the new trail location. And then there'll be another new crosswalk at Quail Ridge. And then the trail will continue on to the intersection with Oxford Riley Road and will be the end of the new curb and gutter. And from there, it will cross on the west side of the Oxford Riley Road and Brookville Road intersection and continue south along the west side of Oxford Riley Road. And right there at the intersection, there'll be some cut sections and possibly a retaining wall required in order to construct the trail along the roadway in that location. From there, it will enter into city-owned property, and the trail will move farther away from the road to about 30 feet off the roadway. And there's not a lot of grade changes or anything proposed through there until it gets close to Dana Drive. There's a few houses and an existing sidewalk that begins, and it's proposed to replace that existing sidewalk and close in a ditch along that area. From there, it will cross Oxford Riley Road at existing crosswalks and RRFBs. That's the pedestrian flashing beacons that are currently installed. Those will be incorporated into the new trail alignment. And from there, it'll continue along the east side of Oxford Riley Road towards the middle school. And where Jessica pointed out the area where the steep ditch is behind the existing sidewalk, is currently proposing a boardwalk type structure that will have some abutments on each end of that area and be able to provide a wider path through there so that there'll be more room for the pedestrians. And from that point, it will try to straighten out some of the alignment and fix some of the drainage structures in that area, and pretty much follow the existing sidewalk and replace it until it meets with the Talawanda Middle School.
Thank you, Scott. So now we're going to talk a little bit about 2021 and beyond, and our plans to kind of keep the trail going. And so in 21, so this year, we are actually looking to try to apply for, if we a Clean Ohio grant application that's coming up very soon. And if I can find one, I'd like to try to find another additional funding source for $400,000 to $500,000 to just really help us stretch our levy. As you can see in our cost estimates, these are really expensive. And we want to also make sure that part of our levy goes toward maintenance and upkeep. And so the more grants we can bring in, the more we can stretch our levy for both grant matches, but also the maintenance and upkeep of our trail system. So that's the goal to help with 3 and 4. And then also in this year, looking ahead to phase 5, it is our goal to apply to OKI again for the STPG grant, so Surface Transportation Block Grant. And we're proposing that we'll look at going from Peffer Park to Talawanda Middle School with a connection up to Chestnut Fields. And if we're really lucky, the future Amtrak station that we're also working on, but that's a conversation for another meeting. And then if awarded, those funds would be released in 24 or 25 for that construction time period. But if awarded, we would get to work right away. So just to kind of give you a sense of where that, it would be closing in the gap between 3 and 4. But here's a closer view where you would cross the railroad here, where Scott had mentioned kind of deviating away from the railroad. We would build a new segment and cross the railroad or go under the railroad. There's lots of things to be discussed, but I'll tell you, it's going to be expensive. That is. And then we'll go across the Kerr Road, and then we'll go near what is the currently existing cobblestone church, and then come out kind of behind Southern Knolls is what we're proposing. And then we'd really like to see a connection up to Chestnut Street, because one, this gets you into a major transportation hub. This is going to be the Butler Regional Transit terminal. We'll have Amtrak here. It's a parking lot. This is a real heavy residential area. So it's a great area to hop on the trail and get to where you need to go, or also just enjoy it recreationally. So the construction estimate for this is about 4.8 million. And so we were hoping to write a grant to OKI for around 3.5 million or thereabouts, but that'll be probably released in March or so and due in June. So that'll be something that we're actively working on this year. Then future planning, but also going on in 21, at least we hope, is that we need to figure out if this little yellow dotted line was a plan that was created by the Oxford Area Trails Group back in 2007 that we talked about. Well, a lot has changed since 2007. And so we'd like to hire a consultant to help us close the gap and bring us from the community park all the way back over to the first segment of the trail. And whether that, hits here or hits here, whether this route changes, all that's up in the air. But we're hoping to announce that bid request for proposal in March of 21, because once we can't apply for a grant until we have routes and cost estimates. And so that's really the next step as we look to jumping across town and fulfilling that final gap. I still have high hopes of trying to achieve the entire trail by 2028 because it'll be 10 years after the levy, but we'll be close. We're definitely on a trajectory of trying to achieve as much as we can by 2028. So that's going to mean in the future grants and more grants. So we'll likely need a grant for the segment between the community park and Mary Day. We'll likely need a grant for Mary Day back over to the Black Covered Bridge. There's another railroad crossing there. So there are some significant things for us to consider. But then I want to take a moment to talk about into the future. And I want to be very clear that none of this is planned, or we have no cost estimates. We have no long-term concrete plans for this. But at the same time, we recognize the value and commitment to connectivity and regionalism. So the state of Ohio actually just opened up for public comment their Walk Bike Ohio plan. And we also have our safety improvement plan. So you can imagine that after this entire 12-mile loop is built, that we really start to get serious about what our Councilman Prithridge calls our spokes. So how do you get from the trail into the heart of our town, whether that's business districts along Locust or High Street, or the Tri area, but you want to be able to have people get around town from bicycling or walking in an easy way. And so that's a local plan. Then stepping out to Butler County, you have all these dotted lines, which are regional connectivity. So it could be, connecting to Houston Woods, still a really great idea. Connecting over to these other trail networks, whether they're in Middletown or Hamilton, or even down in like Riley into Harrison. And then you see Cincinnati is also talking about through the Tri-State Trails and OKI, a regional trail network where you can imagine we could connect to the Whitewater River Trail in Harrison or to the Great Miami Trail over in Dayton. These are big, ambitious, long-term goals, but I want to make sure that we at least mention connectivity and regionalism. And with that, I'm going to stop my screen share. And I see lots of questions. So we will just tackle those. And you're also welcome at this point to raise your hand and I will unmute you to say something. So if you want to raise your hand and speak, why don't we do that first? Okay, I see a few. So Ms. Howard, go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Jessica and Scott, and thank you everyone who's been working on this project. Thank you, Jessica, for your leadership on this. I fully support this project. I think it's a really wonderful addition to the community. I do have a question though, sort of a safety and security concern. We are one of the houses on your Phase 5 trail that goes from the high school to the middle school. And I noticed that that's the only section of the trail that passes in close proximity to the rear boundaries, property lines of almost 24 houses. And those are not in a place that is easily visible. So I'm a little concerned about access from the trail into our properties and whether or not there's been any discussion around managing security for the homeowners that will be impacted by that. Thank you.
That's a great question. And so I want to clarify that the proposed Route 5 is it's literally a hand-drawn little route. So it is not at all a formal route proposal. So that's important distinction versus the maps that Scott went through that are very detailed, and those are actual like GPS coordinates and things. So that's the first kind of heads up. And the second is we would absolutely work with property owners for safety and access, whether that's looking at fencing or, you know, I've seen in other communities where they put up privacy fences and then people can actually put a gate into their privacy fence to hop right on the trail, but it's your choice as a property owner. And so we will definitely take all of those things into consideration as we look at planning the Section 5.
Great, thank you very much.
All right, thank you. Next, I see Mr. Hand, go ahead.
Thank you, Jessica and Scott. And the first thing I want to say is, as a very long time bicyclist in Oxford, I am so grateful for what has been done so far. And I'm really, really pleased at how much use the new segment is getting. We've been using that a lot, particularly during the pandemic, and I've been astonished with the number of people that have been out at many different times of the day. So thank you very much for that. Let's see, I posted one question in the chat. I'll leave that alone. I have two other questions. One is if you could say a little bit more about the details for the railroad crossing. I know that's been a challenge for trying to figure that one out for a number of years. And then do you want to hear the second question now, or you want to answer the first question
Go
first?
ahead with your second question and then we can divide it.
I guess it has more to do with regionalism, but I'm wondering if the city can do anything to revitalize, reinstate, whatever you want to call it, the multi-use path that goes up Patterson Avenue on the, let's see, that is on the west side of Patterson from Chestnut going north to High Street. When Vince, I forget his name, was working at the university, there was a big push for that. And now it is essentially a very large, wide pedestrian sidewalk. I had a near collision with a pedestrian there a year ago, and I won't use it anymore because it's too dangerous for pedestrians and bicycles. It's no longer marked well, and I'm wondering if the city can do anything about that. So those are my two questions. Thank you both for this presentation today.
Thank you, Mr. Hand. Scott, do you think you could try to answer the railroad question and then possibly even the Patterson question? And if not, Mr. Hand, we'll have to get back to you.
The proposed railroad crossing off of phase 3, it's the railroad is owned by CSX, and with only a trail and not a roadway, they would not allow a at-grade crossing for a trail only. There's no road right of way in that location. So we've preliminarily looked at either a tunnel underneath the road or a overpass over the road, which in both cases would require lots of room to do those crossings. But there hasn't been any further design or planning for those crossings. Those would be included for future phases of the trail.
And just a quick follow-up on that, where is that relative to where the Collins Run goes under the railroad? Is that north, plan to be north of it?
It would be south of there, kind of on top of the hill of the where the city has compost facility in that area.
Thank you.
And then Scott, do you know anything about the Miami's plans at all about the wide pass, or is that more of a Miami question?
I'm not familiar with Miami's path. I know it was constructed to be a multi-use path, but I'm not sure what their plans are for it.
All right, so we will follow up on that one with Miami University and let you know what we can find out. And then our last raised hand, and then we'll go to the chat, is Ms. Shaman. So go ahead.
Hello, I also want to add to the thanks that others have already expressed. Our family, like many others, is enjoying the trail immensely, and we look forward to the next phases. My question has to do with phase 5, and it's a little bit similar to what Dr. Howard was asking about. My question has to do with what kind of advocacy or voice or consultation will happen with property owners who are aware that in the pencil drawing, which again is very preliminary and it's easy to draw a wide marker line that covers lots of space. How is that going to be negotiated, especially in the areas that are technically in the township and not in the city? So if you could address that, but most of all, my thanks. We are very much enjoying the trail. Thank you.
I'll try to take that, and then maybe Scott, you can jump in. So once we get, once we get an award of funding, if we're lucky enough to get that, then we move right into formal design process. And as part of that formal design process, that is when we really start to engage with residents along that proposed route and really work to formalize the route location. And if there's any easement requirements, then we talk about either easement donation or easement purchase. And so that level of discussion occurs really only once we start into the formal design process, which does not occur really before funding for us. Now, if we know of a big project going on, like for example, we have a new subdivision that is proposed to go along the area, well, we might work with that property owner to go ahead and dedicate the easement for that trail at this time. So as they build new houses and things like that, it's incorporated into the layout of the trail. Scott, did you want to fix that or add it to that in any way?
Yeah, as you said, as the trail is designed and nears the final stages of design, we'll see what right of way or easements are needed from private property owners, and that would be negotiated at that time.
Thank you. All right, now I'm going to turn to the chat. And we have a lot. I'm super excited to have like 70 people here, you guys, but let's see what kind of questions we have. Okay. All right, going up to the top, I see a question that says the existing nature trails in Peffer Park. So there are existing Miami Natural Area trails and former mountain bike riding trails. If you enter into the Peffer Park parking lot and you look to your left, there's a gray kiosk that you could walk up and look at those trails. And there's like a low ropes course back in there that Miami uses. And so that's what we're talking about when we say crisscrossing with those natural area trails up in there. If I didn't get that right, please type your question again. Then we have another one, who owns the railroad and have there been any conversations with them about future crossing? So it is owned by CSX. Scott, have we had any conversations with them?
No, not yet.
Okay. And let's see. Someone has a suggestion. Might it work better to consider the south side of Brookville Road? Fewer property owners to work with. We looked at that, Scott. Can you talk about why we discarded that idea?
Yeah, a lot of the south side of Brookville Road is outside city limits, and it's also not connected to some of the existing neighborhoods, and the community park entrance is also on the north side. So phase 4, we wanted to use to try to connect some of the neighborhoods and give them access to the park and also the middle school. So that's why it was chosen to be on the north side.
Thank you. Let's see, with the speed limit from around Winding Brook to the first Autumn Drive is 45 miles per hour. And the second Autumn Drive to the community park is 55 miles per hour. Will there be plans to lower the speed limit on Brookville Road? Scott, do you know this one?
Butler County Engineer's Office is currently doing a speed study in that area, and they have the results of their data in that area, but that has to be reviewed by ODOT. So that is currently being reviewed by ODOT, and they're waiting to see if that can be adjusted in that area.
Thank you. Okay, it says also, we are one of the homes on Brookville Road. Our driveway will run directly through the cycleway. What are the plans for that? Do you know how we would address driveways, Scott?
Right now, the driveways would be reconstructed as part of the project in the area of the trail, so that the new trail would match the grade of the driveway. That would all be part of the project. It wouldn't be responsible, the responsibility of the property owner or anything.
And then I'll also chime in that for safety, we might have signage there saying, you know, be aware of driveways. We do have driveways on the first segment of trail, and we have some signage there, and it's worked out pretty well so far. Let's see. I have one clarification. Oh, only the driveway section within the right-of-way will be paved to match grade. So that's an important distinction. Then I have another question. For phase 4, through the Oxford Incorporation limit, how close to the road will the trail be? Also, which easements will be required for residential properties along the Brookville Road? Can you take that one, Scott?
Yeah, so the current design in the area as you approach Oxford Riley Road, when the right-of-way narrows some, the plan is to keep the trail at least 8 to 10 feet off the edge of the roadway. And then as you head out towards the community park, there'll be more right-of-way to keep the trail 15 to 20 feet away from the road and maintain the existing ditch in that area. We want to try to keep the trail as far away from the roadway as we can, but we are limited on right-of-way in some areas.
I don't know if we'll have the answer to this one. And I will say, we don't have an answer for you today. Scott and I will get together and then we will try to draft up a written response. And I probably also will try to do that, and we'll add it to the Oxford Area Trails page, which I'll show that to you before we get off. But the question is, has there been any discussion to have segment 4 path cut behind Western Knolls subdivision to serve as a buffer between the existing neighborhood and future new development? It would offer a more interesting path than along 732. I do remember we talked about going through that neighborhood, and it's really wet and it would be very expensive. But Scott, do you want to maybe expand upon that?
Yeah, that's right. There's we wanted to stay along 732 as a on the city of Oxford property to create another area that has pedestrian facilities. The other side of 732 has an existing sidewalk, so we wanted to add another facility on that side. And going through the city property, as Jessica said, there's a creek area and possibly wetland areas that we wanted to avoid as part of this project. If there's any development on that property, that a trail could possibly be incorporated at that time.
What is the approximate annual income from the levy? It's about 1 million a year for 10 years. So we'll raise a total of 10 million. And our goal is to put 20% of that aside for maintenance and upkeep. Let's see. Someone says, thank you so much for the spokes connection of connecting to the trail into town. It's important to keep in mind. Yes, I agree. And to be honest, to formalize that is going to take a formal study and feasibility and cost estimate, but it is something that's on our radar. This one says, curious about the construction by the middle school sidewalk along 732. How will pedestrian kids get to and from school during this part of the project? Will it be closed to pedestrians for a period of time, or will they be rerouted? I don't know the answer to that question. Do you, Scott? And if not, we'll get back to you.
Yeah, we haven't received any detailed plans on how that would be handled. Typically, the contractor is required to maintain some kind of pedestrian access through their site, whether it is rerouting or if they can provide some kind of temporary path during construction.
Thank you. Then the environmental design group, which is helping us with our route design, did make a comment. We're aiming for a tunnel for the railroad crossing, but open to a bridge. So we'll work with CSX on what we're allowed and able to do, and also what we can afford to do. And between all those things, we'll get some sort of crossing planned. Let's see, another question. The marking needs improved on Patterson for sure. Repaint and signs. We'll advocate, we'll share this with Miami University. Let's see, looking for volunteer opportunities, trail related grant writing, et cetera. Is there a formal way to get involved as a volunteer? Wonderful. We do have kind of an informal Oxford Area Trails group. I'm going to invite you to email me, and that group does help with these kind of endeavors at times. And I'll put my email in the chat before we leave. Thank you. This one says, is there any consideration for a connection to the Springwood subdivision? So we have been communicating with Oxford Township about this, and we are, we've shared some funding ideas with them, and even when we're looking at this fees, but the first thing for ever building any section of trail is to really have a route and a design and cost estimate. And so we are working with the Oxford Township to see, when we do our feasibility study to close the gap later this year, if they want to add on as a township and get a cost estimate for a connection to Springwood. And then from there, they can decide as the township what they want to proceed with or not. Let's see, a comment. I live in one of the homes in Oxford Riley impacted by the new trail. The new flashing lights at Dana do not deter traffic. I'm a regular walker and have been nearly struck many occasions. The speed limit is 35, but vehicles speed through there and barrel through the lights regardless if they are flashing. I strongly encourage the planning to include a look at this and where the crossing is intended to be a part of the trail. Very concerned about trail walkers or bikers being hurt. Thank you for that public comment, and we'll absolutely take that under consideration. How long will the coal ash path be open? I'm a runner and have really enjoyed having a soft non-paved surface to run on for 9 months. So I do hear this from people that they love the softness of the coal ash. It's either a love it or a hate it kind of thing. You either love it because it's good to your knees, or you hate it because you come back with black shoes. So it's going to be open until at least 22 when we start that paving process. And then, I think we can cross that bridge then. Scott, did you have anything to add to that one?
No, that's right. I would say at least another year before it would be paved, at least.
Yep. And then to those of you who like open trail running, the Miami natural areas, the natural path with the mulch and the dirt, that connection off of State Route 73 will continue. Let's see. Can city use eminent domain to take an easement if an owner is necessary for a parcel is on? I said that very wrong. Can the city use eminent domain to take an easement if an owner of a necessary parcel is unwilling? I think we could. We don't want to. We'd like to work with people cooperatively and or purchase or get a donation. But if we had to, we would take that step. It is a transportation project funded by OKI and ODOT funding, so we could if we had to. Let's see. The comment just generally says, our family loves using the trail. My children use their bikes, wheelchair, rollerblades, and scooters on the path. By making this trail ADA compliant, the city has given a great gift to our community members. I attended Ohio University and the bike path was amazing amenity there, so I'm pleased Oxford has one now. Thank you. Okay. Another question about the coal ash that I think we've already answered. Does your planning include giving priority to allow a trail access to the community park for children who reside in Mary Day Park? Well, I don't know yet. So absolutely, connectivity to all of our neighborhoods is something that we want to achieve when we're looking at closing the gap from the community park back over to the black covered bridge. And that does include Mary Day Park, but it also includes numerous other neighborhoods. So neighborhood connection is a big part of the future plans. And that will be happening hopefully in later 21 and 22. Let's see. Thanks to all who have worked on this. Are dark sky lighting considerations being a part of both current and future infrastructure? I know that our environmental commission is looking at lighting considerations for the city. So as we look at lighting, I think nocturnal animal friendly lights is something that we are considering. If easements are required for phase 4, have those property owners already been contacted? Scott, do you know?
Yes, any easements required for phase 4, we've had started initial contacts with the property owners.
Thank you. Okay. Can you use eminent domain in the township? I don't know. We'd have to work that out. Scott, do you know the quick answer to that, or we can get back to them? Okay, we'll get back to you on that. Okay. That is the last of our questions. And so what I want to do is share with you the website of the Oxford Area Trails. So let me get that for you. Hold on just a moment here. I'm going to put it in the chat. So this is the Oxford Area Trails, and we post blog updates, and I'll post the recording to this meeting, and I'll type up the questions and answers for you to have this as well. It'll take me a few days, so give me a little bit of time. But then also, if you have questions about the Oxford Area Trail, you can contact me at Jessica Green at cityofoxford.org, and I'm happy to answer your questions that way as well. And I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your Tuesday afternoon to join Scott and I. I love working on this trail, and I love hearing, we had 70 people attend, so that's really exciting. So as you have ideas and questions and thoughts, please share them with us. We do take them into consideration as we're looking into future planning. And with that, have a wonderful afternoon.